How does a college dropout with no verifiable source of income become one of the most connected men on Earth? How does he own a private island, a fleet of jets, and mansions across America while remaining untouchable for decades? This isn't just a story about one predator. It's a blueprint for how power, money, and silence built an empire of abuse. Jeffrey Epstein presented himself as a phantom of Wall Street, a self-made financial genius who managed money for billionaires too secretive to name. He dropped out of college yet somehow secured a teaching position at an elite Manhattan prep school. From there, he catapulted into the highest echelons of global society, hobnobbing with presidents, princes, Nobel laureates, and tech titans. But here is the question that haunted everyone who looked too closely. Where did the money actually come from? His wealth was a black box, deliberately opaque, endlessly flowing, and suspiciously unearned. He wasn't a hedge fund manager in any traditional sense. He had no public track record, no audited returns, no army of analysts. Yet he commanded a fortune estimated at hundreds of millions, maybe billions. This financial mystery wasn't a bug in his story. It was the feature. It created an aura of untouchability. If you can't trace the money, you can't trace the leverage. And leverage was Epstein's true currency. Epstein's lifestyle was a carefully constructed stage, designed to dazzle and isolate. First, a $77 million mansion on Manhattan's Upper East Side, one of the largest private residences in New York. Then, a waterfront estate in Palm Beach, Florida, where the palms hid more than just the sun. In New Mexico, a sprawling 10,000-acre ranch he called Zorro, where he allegedly planned to seed the human race with his DNA. And finally, Little St. James, a 70-acre private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands, infamously dubbed Pedophile Island by locals. His private jets, particularly a Boeing 727, earned the moniker Lolita Express. Flight logs would later reveal a dizzying itinerary: Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, Kevin Spacey, Chris Tucker, Alan Dershowitz. But the logs alone don't tell the full story. They establish connection without context. And context is everything. These properties weren't just homes. They were fortresses of impunity. By day, they hosted scientific symposiums with Stephen Hawking and gatherings with world leaders. By night, they transformed into something far more sinister. The message was clear. This is a man who operates beyond normal rules, beyond consequence. But at the heart of this empire were the victims, primarily underage girls, some as young as 14. They didn't come from privilege. They were vulnerable, struggling families, aspirations for modeling careers, promises of a few $100s for a massage. Recruiters, many of them former victims themselves, were coerced into finding fresh prey. This created a devastating cycle where survivors became perpetrators, trapped by threats and manipulation. The pattern was systematic: lured with false promises, transported across state and international lines, abused, and then pressured into silence. One survivor described being told, "He owns everything. He owns the police. He owns the judges. Who are they going to believe, you or him?" That wasn't paranoia. That was Epstein's genius. He didn't just abuse girls. He built a system where the victims believed they were powerless. Epstein weaponized his wealth and connections in three ways. First, as a sword, he funded political campaigns, donated to prestigious universities. Harvard alone received $30 million and bought legitimacy. Second, as a shield, he employed an army of lawyers, private investigators, and fixers who harassed victims and intimidated journalists. Third, as a smokescreen, he cultivated an image of a philanthropic intellectual, hosting scientists at his island retreats, funding cutting-edge research. This made people look away. After all, could a man who funds MIT's Artificial Intelligence Lab really be a monster? The answer, we now know, is yes. But for decades, that question was enough to create doubt. And doubt was all he needed. But here's where the story takes an even darker turn. Because Epstein's empire wasn't just protected by wealth, it was protected by a systematic failure of justice. In Part 2, we'll expose how a secret plea deal in 2008 revealed the depth of corruption, how a survivor named Virginia Giuffre refused to be silenced, and how a trove of unsealed documents is finally pulling back the curtain on a network that many hoped would stay hidden forever. The question isn't just who knew, it's who helped bury the truth. How does a monster operate in plain sight for decades? How does a web of crime, spanning continents and involving some of the world's most powerful people, remain hidden for so long? These aren't questions from a fictional thriller. They are the haunting, real-life questions at the heart of the Jeffrey Epstein case. And today, we are going to pull back the curtain, not just on the man himself, but on the system that protected him. This is a story about more than just one individual's evil deeds. It's about a hidden web of power, the corrupting influence of immense wealth, and a deafening silence that allowed unimaginable suffering to continue year after year. Let's start with the basics. Jeffrey Epstein cultivated an image of a financial genius, a mysterious billionaire with a private island and a contact list that read like a who's who of the global elite. He moved in circles of scientists, politicians, royals, and Wall Street titans. This access, this proximity to power, was his greatest weapon. It wasn't just a social status symbol, it was a shield. It created an aura of untouchability. When whispers and accusations first started to surface, many people likely thought, it can't be true. A person connected to so many important figures couldn't possibly be involved in something so dark. That's the first layer of the shield, credibility bought through association. Power insulates. It makes people doubt the accusers and give the benefit of the doubt to the accused. But it goes deeper than just social connections. The second, and perhaps most powerful, tool in Epstein's arsenal was money. We are talking about a fortune so vast it could buy silence, loyalty, and legal maneuvering that would be unthinkable for an ordinary person. He used his wealth to fund powerful institutions, donate to political campaigns, and support scientific research. This wasn't just philanthropy, it was strategic. These donations created a network of dependence and obligation. Institutions and individuals who benefited from his money were less likely to question his character or investigate allegations. They had a vested interest in maintaining the status quo. Money, in this context, becomes a gag. It buys complicity, both active and passive. Then there's the legal system itself. The now infamous 2008 non-prosecution agreement in Florida is a glaring example of how the system can be manipulated. Despite dozens of victims coming forward, Epstein was given a deal that was shockingly lenient. It not only allowed him to serve a minimal sentence in a private wing of a county jail with work release privileges, but it also granted immunity to his potential co-conspirators. How does a deal like that happen? It happens through high-priced legal teams, connections, and the exploitation of loopholes. It sends a chilling message to victims. Even when you speak up, the powerful can bend the rules. Justice, it seems, can have a price tag. This wasn't a failure of the system. It was the system working exactly as it was designed to by those with the resources to control it. One of the most disturbing parts of this story is the network of enablers. Epstein didn't operate alone. He needed people to recruit victims, manage his properties, fly his jets, and, most importantly, look the other way. Ghislaine Maxwell is the most prominent name, convicted for her central role in the trafficking scheme. But the network was wider. It included staff, associates, and acquaintances who saw what was happening and chose silence over intervention. Why? Fear is one reason. Fear of losing their jobs, fear of retribution from a powerful man. But there's also the element of normalization. When you're in a bubble where this kind of behavior is an open secret, it can become disturbingly normalized. The moral compass of an entire group can be warped by the gravity of wealth and power. This brings us to the silence of the elite. For years, powerful men and women flew on Epstein's private jet, visited his island, and attended his parties. How many of them knew? How many suspected? And how many chose to ignore it for their own benefit? This is the question that still hangs in the air. The release of flight logs and court documents has given us names, but it hasn't given us the full picture of who knew what and when. The silence of these individuals is a form of complicity. By continuing to associate with him, they lent him their credibility and helped maintain his protective shield. Their silence allowed the abuse to continue. It is a stark reminder that looking the other way in the face of injustice is not a neutral act. It is a choice, and it has consequences. Even after his death in a Manhattan jail cell, which itself is shrouded in questions and controversy, the story is far from over. His death left a void where accountability should be. We may never see him face a jury for the full extent of his crimes. But the focus has now shifted, rightfully, to those who enabled him. The legal battles continue. Survivors are still fighting for justice, not just against his estate, but against the institutions and individuals who facilitated his abuse. For example, major banks are facing lawsuits for allegedly facilitating his trafficking operation by ignoring clear red flags in his financial activities. These cases are crucial because they aim to hold the system accountable, not just the individual. So what is Epstein's dark legacy? It's a legacy of shattered lives and profound trauma for his victims, whose bravery in coming forward is the only reason we know as much as we do. Their courage in the face of unimaginable horror is the driving force for change. But his legacy is also a glaring expose of the deep-seated corruption that can fester when wealth and power go unchecked. It shows us how silence can be the most potent weapon of all, and how entire systems, legal, financial, and social, can be bent to protect the powerful at the expense of the vulnerable. The unanswered questions are what keep this story alive. The full list of co-conspirators and enablers remains largely in the shadows. The full extent of his connections and the secrets he held may never be fully known. His death prevented a trial that could have exposed so much more. But we can't let those unanswered questions lead to apathy. We have to keep asking them. We have to demand transparency and hold power to account. The Epstein case is not just a sordid tale of one man's depravity. It's a mirror held up to our society, reflecting the dark places where money, power, and silence intersect to create a haven for monsters. The fight for justice is far from over. It continues in courtrooms, in investigative journalism, and in the public discourse. It's our collective responsibility to ensure that a story like this never happens again. We do that by listening to survivors, by questioning authority, and by refusing to be silenced. Thank you for watching. If you found this deep dive valuable, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more content that dares to ask the hard questions. Stay informed and stay engaged.